Hi, you guys. How are you? Are you doing well? I hope you are. Tonight, I'm going to be telling you guys a story, and to be specific, a Bible story, one of my favorites. And right here with me, I have my Bible. It's the New World Translation of the Holy Scriptures. So, I'm not gonna read it word for word, but I'm going to be mostly telling you the story without reading it mostly. I will read certain verses just to kind of emphasize a point, but for the most part, I will be just telling the story. I know the story pretty well. So, it's the story of Esther, Queen Esther, and how she saved the Jews. So, here we go. Now, King Ahasuerus, he had a lot of land that he was a ruler over, and he ruled over 127 provinces or places from India to Ethiopia. But where his throne sat, King Ahasuerus lived in the city of Shushan. And one day, King Ahasuerus, he held a banquet for all his princes and his servants, the army of Persia and Media, and he showed them kind of like the wealth of the kingdom. And he did this for 180 days. And then when those days were completed, he held another banquet for 7 days for the people in Shushan, from the greatest to the least. And he held this in the courtyard of the garden of the king's palace. And it said in verse 7 of chapter 1 that wine was served in golden cups. So all the people present in Shushan, they got to kind of like drink from the golden cups of the king, which is pretty impressive. Imagine trying to drink after like the president, but I guess it would be kind of like the same thing. And King Ahasuerus, he had a wife, and she is known as Queen Vashti. And on the seventh day of the last day of the banquet that he held for the people in Shushan, he was in a cheerful mood because he had a lot of wine, and he had with him a couple of people, and their names were Mehuman, Biztha, Harbona, Bigtha, Abagtha, Zathar, and Carcass. The 7, and they were court officials, 7 of them in total. And they were personal attendants to King Ahasuerus himself. And he told these 7 court officials to bring Queen Vashti, who was also having a banquet of her own in her quarters with the women in the palace. And he wanted Queen Vashti to come before him and the princes at his table, wearing her royal headdress to show them how beautiful she was. And it says in chapter 1, verse 11, that she was very beautiful. But every time that the king ordered her to come, Queen Vashti kept refusing for no reason. She didn't give a specific reason why she did not want to come. So that made King Ahasuerus very angry. And he said that he wanted all the women in Shushan, virgins, who were beautiful in appearance, to come and be massaged by the keeper of women in the palace. And Queen Vashti was to be demoted as queen because she did not obey the command that was told to her by King Ahasuerus. Now, it skips ahead to chapter 2. The king's personal attendant said, a search should be made for young, beautiful virgins for the king, and let the king appoint commissioners in all the provinces of his realm to bring together all the beautiful young virgins to Shushan, the citadel, to the house of women. Let them be put in the care of Haggai, the king's eunuch and guardian of the women, and let them be given beauty treatments or massages. And the young woman who is most pleasing to the king will be queen instead of Vashti. The suggestion was, acceptable to King Ahasuerus, and that's exactly, what was done. So it explains that there is a Jewish man that lived in Shushan, and his name was Mordecai. And he was the son of Jair, son of Shimei, son of Kish, and he was a Benjaminite who had been taken into exile from Jerusalem when they were deported with King Jeconiah of Judah, who King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon took into exile. And Mordecai, this man Mordecai, he was the guardian of a woman named Hadassah. Now, many people might not know this, but Hadassah was Esther's Hebrew name. And Hadassah is the only time, is only mentioned one time, and that's in the book of Esther. And she was the daughter of Mordecai's brother, and they both, Esther's mom and dad, died. So she was taken in as a daughter by Mordecai. And it says that the young woman, meaning Esther, was beautifully formed and attractive in appearance. So she was basically gorgeous. And when the law went out in Shushan that all the women, the young women, virgins, were supposed to go to the citadel under the care of Haggai, Esther was not exempt, so she was to go to the king's house and go get the beauty massages. Now, Esther won his favor very quickly, King Ahasuerus, and he quickly arranged for her beauty treatments and her diet, and he assigned 7 women from the king's house to her, basically like her handmaidens. So he basically right away fell in love with her and chose her as his queen. And he transferred her and her handmaidens to the best house, the best place in the House of Women. Esther did not say anything about her being a Jew, which is probably very important at that time, because King Ahasuerus didn't really know anything about the Jews or Jewish law, and he probably wouldn't have been in favor of her being a Jew. But her uncle Mordecai told her not to say anything about her being a Jew or that her family was Jewish. So Esther obeyed what her uncle had told her and didn't say anything about her being a Jew. And, Mordecai being, basically her father figure, because her parents died when she was young, would come every day to the gate in front of the courtyard and in front of the House of the Women and ask about Esther's welfare, and was asking about what was happening to her and if she was okay. And after all these beauty treatments, King Ahasuerus finally chose Esther to become his queen, and says, Esther was taken to King Ahasuerus at his royal house in the 10th month, that is, the month of Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. And the king came to love Esther more than all the other women, and she won his favor and approval more than any of the other virgins. So he put the royal headdress on her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. So once the headdress came off of Vashti, she was no longer queen. And the moment that headdress went on to Esther, she became queen. And in celebration of his new queen, King Ahasuerus threw a great banquet for all his servants and his princes, and he claimed an amnesty for the provinces, and he gave a lot of gifts according to the means of the king. And because he was super rich, that means that his gifts were kind of awesome. And still, just as Mordecai had instructed Esther, she did not say anything about her being a Jew. Now, in those days, Mordecai would sit in the king's gate, and 2 court officials of the king, their names were Bigthan and Teresh, and they were doorkeepers, and they got angry one day and plotted to do away or kill King Ahasuerus. But Mordecai, having eavesdropped on this, learned about it, and without hesitation, he told Queen Esther. And Esther then spoke to the king, King Ahasuerus, in Mordecai's name. So there was an investigation that was done, and eventually it was confirmed that they were plotting to kill him. And both men were hung on a stake and killed and hung on a stake. Now, there was a man, and his name was Haman, and he was the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and he was a very respectable man, and he kind of thought a lot about himself, and he wanted, like, all the servants who were serving on the gate to kind of bow low, like he was an important person or something. But Mordecai, he was one of those people, being a servant of God, who did not bow low or prostrate himself to Haman, because who was he? You know what I mean? He was just a court official. You're no one special. And Haman went up to Mordecai and said, "Why are you ignoring the king's commandment?" But it wasn't a command for him to bow low. It was just him being, prideful, I guess, of his position. And day after day, Haman